Hey everyone, thank you for watching. Today's video I'm excited to do. I'm going to be reviewing all of the books that I read in the month of September. This is a new series that I started on my channel. I started last month where I give short reviews of all of the books that I have read. I am a primarily beauty focused channel, but I actually started my career in social media as a book blogger back in 2009, and I still do run my book blog and post reviews over there. And I really wanted to bring that to my YouTube channel as well. Started incorporating more content onto my channel, more than just beauty. I do some around the home, fashion blogs, obviously about books, and even some vlogs with my dog Aries here, who she was highly featured in my last vlog, so give her a little bit. She's like, I want to make sure everyone knows that I am right here. But she's gonna help me review the, I believe it's 5 books that I read in the month of September. So if you are new here, I hope that you will subscribe and stick around for lots of content I post every single day on YouTube. And let's go ahead and get started. Well, welcome. That was one of the most interesting intros I've done, but I've been here for almost 20 minutes and she's just been sitting in front of the camera the entire time. So now I hope you enjoy Big Booty Judy here. You're so funny. This is my 3rd video I'm filming today. The other 2 have been in my office where I normally film, and she's like, I need more attention than this, Mom. But we're gonna start off. The first book that I read in the month of September is called We Lie Here, and this is by Rachel Howzell Hall. This is one of the most terrifying thrillers I have read in a long time. So some of my book preferences, I really enjoy chick lit. My blog is called Chick Lit Plus. So definitely love me, you know, a chick lit, a rom-com. But I also really enjoy thrillers, psychological suspense novels, family dramas seem to get to me a lot. And I primarily get all of the books that I'm reviewing in PR, just like I do in my beauty videos. I get these books in exchange for reviewing them on my blog. But a little bit of the description: a woman's trip home reveals frightening truths in a twisty novel of murder and family secrets. So we have TV writer Yara Gibson. Her hometown is Palmdale, California. She's back to host her parents' 20th wedding anniversary and find the perfect family mementos for the celebration. But there she gets a text message that says, I have information that will change your life. The message is from Felicia, Yara is not familiar with, but who's connected to the family, and then shows up dead. Then her body's in the lake. So Yara has this pretty distressing interaction with Felicia, where Felicia just keeps saying she has information she has to tell her, and seems very much in distress. And then obviously she's gone. So I gave this one a 4-star review, and from my review, which is on Chick Lit Plus, it says this one really takes the cake on extreme family dysfunction and jaw-dropping plot twists that had me grimacing and trying to shield my eyes while reading. I described Yara as an immediately likable heroine that seems trapped in a horror movie, each chapter slowly peeling back yet another part of the mystery surrounding her hometown, her family secrets, and multiple unsolved murders. One thing I enjoyed about this story too is that there's kind of multiple layers to everything that's going on outside of just the domestic thriller portion. We have talks of racism, the bond of sisterhood, mental health disorders is really highly talked about in here. There were a few times where I had to put down my Kindle because like truly I was sweating and I was very fearful of what the next page would hold. And even though I like me a good thriller, I do live alone. It's me and my dog, and sometimes I'm like, sometimes I just need a little bit of a break from something that's really scary. And it wasn't necessarily like this was horror. I don't really do like horror or like gruesome very well, but it's just playing in your mind the whole time, because as you're reading it, you're like, is it someone in her own family who is deliberately playing with Yara's mind and emotions? Is it someone really close to her that is now also involved in not just one murder, not just Felicia's murder, someone else ends up murdered too, and you're like trying to figure out who it is. And I'll say, as I was reading, I was like, I don't know, I kind of have like a suspicion, but I was like, there's not a shot. There's just like, there's no chance this book will take it there. This book, nothing was off limits. Nothing was off limits. And when I read the last chapter, like my stomach hurt. My stomach hurt for how there's really people out there that do these kind of horrific things that they can do. And then even when we got to the very last page, like the last page, there's still yet another twist that's going to come your way. And I was like, this one, I recommend if you don't have a weak stomach, you can handle thrillers well, because there is a lot in here that will just make you sit back and go, whoa, That's disturbing. All right, next up, we are totally going to change gears here, and now we are going to talk about Cinder Nanny, and this is a novel by Sariah Wilson. So from the description, what could come between a nanny and an earl in a fairy tale love story? A reality check in an endearing and witty romance. So we follow Diana Parker. Says with her sister's medical bills mounting, she can't say no to a high-paying opportunity like this. Accompany a wealthy couple to Aspen and nanny their precocious 5-year-old son for 3 months. All she has to do is know how to ski, teach math, speak fluent French, excel at social graces, and hold a master's degree in child development. And even though Diana has none of those qualifications, it turns out her mother is a very well-known con artist who was actually in prison for her crimes, but used to loop Diana and her sister in on her crimes. And so Diana's like, well, I can do this, you know? And I thought that was so interesting in the beginning of the novel to be like, oh, I'm reading about a con artist's daughter who then is going on to con a family to watch the son. Like, it's a little bit of a slippery slope there, right? But you can tell that Diana has good intentions. Like, she's not going to nanny and just leave the boy to do whatever it is he wants. And she was trying to look up and figure out the best ways that she could be the best nanny to him. And she was also doing it because her sister is facing a really scary health battle, and now she's in also a legal battle with her ex-husband. There's children involved. There's a lot going on than just she's trying to con a family to get some money. So I was like, okay, I can see the balance there. This is another one I gave a 4-star review to, because sometimes with rom-coms, it can get a little bit on the predictable side. And when Diana decides and gets this nannying job and she tells her sister she's going to Aspen, her sister's like, oh my gosh, maybe you'll run into this earl that's out there. And her sister's like, that will never happen. And I'm like, well, obviously that's gonna happen. I mean, we know it from the synopsis, but it was just like so, you know, it was put out there right from the beginning. So I was like, that's definitely gonna happen. But from my review, I said the word that kept popping into my head while reading this one was charming. I enjoyed that Diana didn't have a typical backstory. And again, she made some unwise decisions, but made with good intentions. After Diana gets to Aspen, she very quickly runs into the earl, who is kind of having a hard time. It mirrored just slightly on the actual royal family that we know, where we have 2 brothers and one is just not so interested in continuing on with the family traditions and the lineage, and he's actually with a woman that he shouldn't be with, and they have a daughter that they're like trying to hide from their grandmother. You know, like, I mean, it was like a whole thing, and I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. But they meet pretty quickly, and Diana is trying to still convince him that she's just on Aspen as part of this wealthy vacation. They run into each other at like a charity fundraiser where she's stepping in place for her employers. So she's like, oh, he must think that I'm also like the super rich, important person, and I'm just gonna try to make it seem that way. Otherwise, he won't want to have anything to do with me. And so you kind of watch their romance play out, which I thought was really cute. I also want to say that I really liked the children's storylines in here. They were so, like some of the one-liners that they had were so funny. And the boy that she's nannying, and then the earl's niece it would have been, they have a really funny bond, and there's just some comical moments in there that I thought really added a lot to the story. I said Milo's one-liners were too good. I'd say there are a few instances I felt certain plot points were glossed over that I would have enjoyed them being expanded on, but for the most part I could just sit back, relax, and escape to a very different world than my own. So again, just kind of a cutesy, a feel-good read. And if that sounds good to you, Cinder Nanny will be a fun one. Next up, I read The Dead Romantics, and this is by Ashley Poston. So from the synopsis, it says a delusioned millennial ghostwriter who quite literally has some ghosts of her own has to find her way back home in this sparkling adult debut. So Florence Day is the ghostwriter for one of the most prolific romance authors in the industry, but she has a problem. After a terrible breakup, she no longer believes in love, but she's ghostwriting a romance novel, and now she has to go and meet with her new editor and explain why the story is not finished, why she has not turned in her manuscript yet. So she has this new editor, a too handsome mountain of a man, and he won't give her an extension on her book deadline. So Florence is thinking her career is going to be over. She's wondering if she is going to be sued because it's not just her books. She's writing under a different author's name, who that author is expecting that book to be written. So it's all bad. But as all of that is happening in her professional life, she gets the phone call that her father, who she was extremely close to, has passed away. And she now has to travel back to her hometown to help prepare for all of his services. What makes Florence a little bit interesting is that she can see dead people. Both her and her father have this ability. And something about me is I love what we call a magical realism novel, where it's, you know, something magical or ghostly or otherworldly is happening, but it's written in a very real sense to the story. So it's not like set in a fairyland or set in a different time or like anything like that. Like, it's very real. It's like she's a real person, she's a ghostwriter, she has friends, she has, you know, this bad breakup she went through, but she could also see dead people. And oh yeah, so could her dad. And her dad also ran the funeral home in their hometown. And she has not been back to her hometown in 10 years because she felt like she was never really accepted there, especially with what her father did as a living that already kind of made them weird. But then she made the news because when she was 13, she ended up solving a little boy's murder because the little boy's ghost came to her. And so when she explained that, then everyone thought she was, you know, crazy, and they would call her Wednesday, like Wednesday Addams and all of that. So she hasn't been back to her hometown in 10 years, and now she feels horrible because her father is gone, but she's trying to help her family prepare for these services. But what gets crazier is that her editor shows up in her hometown as a ghost. As a ghost. You learn that he's been hit by a car and now he's showing up as a ghost. And what's so cute about this novel is that they kind of had a little interaction right before she got the phone call about her father's death, and you could tell that they were into one another. Even after he shows up in her town, you can tell that they have a connection between them, but he's dead. He did. So, but she kind of has that thought of like, well, I can still see him and I can still interact with him, and my family accepts it because they are used to it, and our father was the same way. So like, she really has that thought of like, should I be with someone who's technically not alive or what? So I give this one a 4.5 star review because I really enjoyed it so much. I said it brought in so many of my favorite elements: following a writer, a bookish romance, and oh yes, a lot of ghosts. A good magical realism storyline always catches my interest. And then I said in my review that when I think of a book surrounding a family that owns a funeral home, a dead editor to boot would be sad, dark, and a downer. But this one was really anything but, because it really was all about celebrating the lives of people. There is so much humor. There's a very big cast of just kind of quirky characters. You never really know who's going to show up in the book or what they're going to say. There's a lot of sweet moments with Florence and her interactions with these ghosts. Like, there's like an older couple in there. I thought that was like so sweet. We kind of get an ending to them, which I just thought was so cute. The only part that I was like slightly bummed about was that I kind of figured out the storyline pretty quickly. So it was like, I knew what was gonna happen, so I was just kind of waiting for that to happen. But what I liked was at the end, it wasn't just all tidied up really neatly with a bow. There was still a little bit of a twist in the end, and I was like, oh, okay, like I kind of wonder how it is gonna end. But it made it pretty clear very early on of like what was going on. And you know, obviously maybe that was the author's intentions, or maybe some people would like it that way. But to me, I thought it would have been a little bit fun to have a little bit more suspense in there of like, what is actually going to happen, and how is she going to choose, and like what, like how is this going to end? It was just slightly predictable to me, but it's still so fun. Definitely a lot different of a novel than I expected going into it, but one I really recommend. The next book I read is 1,000 Miles, and this is by Bridget Morrissey. So from the synopsis, it says, after a decade of silence, Dee and Ben reunite for a road trip they once promised to take. So Dee Matthews, she is a podcast host, and a very well-known podcast host at this. And her best friend from high school, Ben, shows up out of the blue on her apartment one night, letting her know that his grandmother has passed away, and they made a promise to his grandmother. They buried a time capsule in her home and said they would come back in 10 years and open it. So the 10 years is happening. His grandmother is newly passed away. He has to go out to the house to get it ready to sell anyways. So he shows up at Dee's and asks if she wants to take a road trip with him out to Colorado. Dee and Ben have not talked to each other in the 10 years. You could kind of tell that they probably both had a thing for each other in high school, but they had been friends for so long, they didn't want to ruin the friendship, so neither one of them ever said anything to each other. Kind of came to a breaking point around prom when Dee was really convinced Ben was going to ask her, and he didn't, and they got in a fight about it. And even on her podcast, she just calls him name redacted, like won't even give him a name, won't put it out there to anyone. And then he shows up and she's like, okay, let's do this. And it was, I'll say it almost read a little bit more as like a novella, which is just a shorter storyline. So you don't get everything quite as expanded on as you would in a full-length novel. And because I felt like it moved really quickly, and there were a few things that I was like, wait, what? I'm not really sure I understand why the character is making that choice or this choice, because it was just moving at such a quick pace. But I still gave it a 4-star review. I said a road trip rom-com, sign me up. I did say it read more like a novella, is quick to jump to scenes. Sometimes I wish for a little more meat in between the pages, but we're thrown into the drama right away. So if you like something that's more fast-paced, it's really like get to the point, like here's where the story's going, here's what's happening. I thought it was interesting with Dee being a podcast host and as someone who is known as, you know, more of like a social media personality. She kind of struggles with boundaries and how much do you share online, and also why are you sharing something because you want to share it? Are you sharing something for content? Are you doing something like even this road trip? Is she doing it because she wants to, or is she doing it for content? Some of the conversations she has with Ben, is she doing it because she wants to have them? Is she doing it because it's podcast worthy? And I can really relate to that. I've lived my life online for over a decade. I don't know, what's it been? 13 years or something like that. That October is actually my anniversary of starting my blog. I started Chick Lit Plus in October of 2009. So I've been doing this for a long time, and it definitely can be hard to find those boundaries. So I felt like I could relate to her in those sense. But also with Dee, it was kind of hard to get a handle on her because I said I felt like I never knew which Dee was going to show up. At times she was brash and bold, and other times she was so much more timid and unsure of herself that I was like, I felt like I couldn't get a good handle on her. Ben was super sweet. He's like the guy that I feel like every woman is searching for, like just a good guy all around type of thing. Their road trip I thought was really funny. I'm originally from the Midwest. I live in Las Vegas now, but I'm from Iowa, and I drove here when I moved here about a year and a half ago. Me and Aries drove through it, so a lot of what they were like stopping and seeing on the way, and even like just like the freeways they were on, I was like, oh my gosh, that was my route too. They have some funny moments at a baseball game. There was a sweet element to like rescuing a cat that I thought was cute in here. And it ends at their high school reunion, and there was some fun scenes in there. Again, sometimes it can be a little bit on the predictable side, but I said overall a fresh and modern romantic comedy about taking a chance to get that second chance. So gave this one a 4-star review. And finally, the last book I read in September is one I actually gave a 5-star review to, and this is The Beach Trap by Ali Brady. In the synopsis, it says, 2 best friends torn apart by a life-altering secret, one summer to set the record straight. So in here, we follow Kat Steiner and Blake O'Neill. They meet when they are 12 years old at a summer camp, and they become instant best friends. But they learn at summer camp that their dad is actually the same person. Their daddy was living a double life. Daddy double life is what we'll call him in here. They find this out, and Kat in her 12-year-old mind gets it in her head that Blake was only befriending her at camp because she wanted to steal her dad. Like she thought Blake had already figured out that they did share the same dad, and she was trying to steal her dad to get him back and to go back with her and all of these things. I'd say that was one part of the storyline that I didn't love because I just couldn't make the connection of how she thought a 12-year-old not only tracked down a man who left her family after her mom passed away and she was still really young, and then somehow got to a summer camp, and then somehow figured out how to get the dad to go to the summer camp. But I was like, I guess the mind can really do a lot when you really want to believe something, or when you really not want to believe something. I guess your mind can go to all different places. So once I kind of let that slide, I really enjoyed the story because flash forward when the girls are now adults, Daddy Double Life has passed away pretty suddenly, but in his will, he gave his beach house in Florida to both of the girls. So Kat and Blake have to decide, are they going to keep this beach house or are they going to sell it? And the girls have not spoken since that final day at camp. You know, Blake wrote Kat a few letters, but Kat was so convinced that Blake was this terrible person that she didn't respond to any of them. And the two girls just definitely do not see eye to eye. They've taken very different stages in life. Kat was, you know, really born into privilege, and her father was really well off, and since he stuck with the family the whole time, she's used to kind of a certain way of living. Whereas Blake lost, you know, her father, never came back to her after her mother died. She was raised by her grandparents. Her grandfather is now in a home, and she's trying to be able to pay for his stay, which is, you know, so expensive. They really have two very different lives. Kat is a social media influencer, which is interesting to me because it is also what I do. So it's so funny reading books now that follow main characters that are influencers, because that was never a thing for how long, but now it is. But I said in my review that I want to describe The Beach Trap as a rom-com because it had that feel to it. From the cover, there's some meet cutes in the story, though they are more on the untraditional side. But I said, really, this is more a story of sisterhood and self-love, which I appreciated. I definitely was more Team Blake along the way. Kat definitely came off as just a very privileged, everything goes my way, I get whatever I want when I want type of character, which I don't necessarily connect with, whereas Blake is like, I'll put in the hard work and make things happen, and I just feel personally more of a connection with that. But it was fun because I also kind of like the HGTV feel to it of the girls have to completely redo this beach house. Blake is working on kind of the bigger projects of the home. Kat is working a little bit more on the interior design. There's a lot of funny dog moments in there, which I really enjoyed. And I personally liked the ending, though I can see some people not liking it. It was really all just wrapped up really nicely, and I thought in a very sweet way. And sometimes with the endings of books, you like to know things, and sometimes at the endings, you like to use your imagination to figure out like what did happen next. And in this one, really get everything of like how the girls' lives are turning out, which I just really enjoyed. I thought it was a sweet way to end the story, and I really liked it, and I really connected it with it that way. I also liked a lot of Kat's perspective as well. Once again, just being in social media of what does it mean to just be someone who posts pretty photos that people want to emulate, and what does it mean to actually be an influencer and hopefully influence people in a good way, in a positive way, and to inspire people. And that's what I really enjoyed about her storyline, and there were some deeper moments in there instead of just posting what lipstick you're wearing or that 4th of July look. I thought those were some funny scenes in the book too that I really connected with. And then we do have the rom-com elements in there as well. Both girls have a love interest. Both love interests are not who they feel like they should be with or who they really fit in with. So I thought those were some fun storylines also, but at the end of the day, I really ended up enjoying that one. Once I got over that little hump of like, does this make sense? I was like, you know what, let's just enjoy the book. The setting was fun, the characters were fun to follow, and I gave it a 5-star read. After that though, that is going to do it for me and Aries. Those are the 5 books that I read in the month of September and my reviews on them, from rom-coms, chick lit, some thrillers, I see dead people moments. Got a little bit of everything in here. I will link all of the books down below if you're interested in reading any of them. I will also link my reviews on my blog if you want to check those out, or any more books. Again, I've been doing this for many years, so there's a lot of book reviews over there. I hope that you are enjoying the book videos, and if you like this one, please make sure to give it a thumbs up. I hope you also consider subscribing before you go, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.